Hey everybody, welcome back to Spearfactor. Today we're going to welcome a Santa Cruz area diver, Central California, Mr. Eric Anderson. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Brett. Appreciate
Yeah.
you having me on.
Yeah. I noticed that kind of funny story. I noticed you were tagging me on some stuff, and uh, I thought you kind of had a unique story just because I've talked to some of my Hawaiian friends, and when they say you're diving like down here and we dive in murk or whatever, they think we're crazy because there's great whites everywhere. And I'm like, no, that's for the northern guys. That's not for me.
Yeah.
So uh, can you give us a little bit of information about your background?
Yeah, definitely. Originally from Chico, California. If you know the beer scene in Nevada, you know that area well. And after high school, didn't have a lot of direction. College wasn't really in the cards, so took a jump off the deep end, joined the Marine Corps. My grandfather had been a Marine for 25 years. He retired, did 2 tours in Vietnam. My dad was in the Navy for 20 years. So I had a lot of military background, and it was always kind of in my back pocket as plan D. So I jumped right into it. But after that, met a woman, Marissa, when I had about 4 years into 5 total for the Marine Corps. And her dad really got me into diving and spearfishing, and that's how I started getting in the water. And that was back in 2013. Started with a scuba certification, quickly realized scuba and spear guns is not the sportiest mixture, in my opinion. So quickly, after a lot of ab diving, jumped right into free diving. And I've been slowly free diving for about 3 years now.
So did your wife's your dad, he had been diving for a long time, or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
him and his buddies have been diving since the late 60s. Had gone on, a lot of trips for bug diving, did spear fishing, but mostly just Northern California lingcod. Never really gotten to, sea bass or yellowtail or anything like that. But listening to his stories is really what got me hooked. And then as soon as I got in the water and started exploring around and had that bit of adrenaline rush, it's like, oh, this is for me. So it was really gangbusters from there.
Nice. So then, so that you said that was 2013.
Yeah,
And
that's
you
when I got
got
out
your
of the Marine
cert.
Corps.
Yeah, and you got your cert. So tell us about how your Marine Corps experience, do you think like kind of blends in or supports or whatever? How do you think it plays into your diving?
Yeah. It's kind of for me, it's twofold. It's therapy, but it's also the gear prep, the mission mindset, that kind of just the night before getting amped up. I can't help myself. My wife thinks I'm nuts. I've converted my garage into a dive shop. I've got spear guns and spear rubber and everything all over the place. So it's I'm a gear guy. I dive with a tourniquet and pretty good kit on my belt. Pretty streamlined, but not too much. And then once I get in the water, then I'm kind of on autopilot. I immediately feel comfortable. I'm relaxed. I know what I'm after, but I'm also having a good time diving with a buddy, and kind of that teamwork of, one up, one down, moving around, checking the reef, calling things out. It's exactly what I did in the military, just a different environment, far different environment, really.
No, that's a solid point because like we were talking about before, that kind of hits home for me too, because like most of my dive buddies are in the service now or whatever, and it's like, yeah, the whole one up, one down thing. I still hear I'm up, he sees me, I'm down, all in my head, like or all that stuff. But yeah, and I think exactly what you're talking about, the camaraderie and the teamwork. And so when you talk about gear prep though, so I have my little way, and I bet it's pretty similar to you. Like, so how do you do your gear prep the night before? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. So I've got one of these waterproof bags, a 60-liter bag. It's just got one side pocket and one big pocket. So when I hang my gear up, I've got a couple racks. Everything has a spot. Most often than not, I'll pack it after it's dry just so it's ready to go. But sometimes, I don't like letting bands go for more than 3-4 months. If I've got the material, I'll tune them up, tie new bands, get things ready, check my shooting line. If I got mono, check my crimps. The worst thing in the world is putting in all the effort. You get on the reef, you spent 4 hours diving, you finally find the fish you're looking for, you line up the shot, and your shit breaks or tears off, or something as simple as your flopper wasn't tuned and it just pulls right off the shaft. That's happened to me a couple times. So it's always just, checking everything over, even if I think it's good to go. Can't help myself.
Yeah, I mean those are all important things. I told one of my buddies when we first started going offshore uh, for dogtooth, I told him like, hey, I've seen it with bluefin. Like if there's a kink in your armor, it is going to get exposed very, very quickly. So like bulletproof everything. Um, I over engineer everything. I don't want to say over engineer, but like overdo everything. If I put like exactly what you said with the with the flopper, like that little thing could mean the
Mhm.
difference between, well, you know how it is when you hit a fish. I think all you guys out there too, like when you hit a fish, it's like, yeah, and then it's extreme low, and you just like, just pissed.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, so you dive. Where do you tell everybody where you dive mostly in
Yeah.
the?
So, 90% of my diving is in the Santa Cruz area, which is, shallow continental shelf. Max depth to most of the diving is 40 feet. It's murky, it's dirty. There's a lot of sand and shale. There's some good, rocks and ledges. And if you can line up, the right water, when there's a little bit of current, you know where to hunt on the head of the reef. You can line up some, good rockfish like vermilions, um, kelp rockfish, grass rockfish, and then of course Cabozone and lingcod. There's other species of fish out here that guys go after. I've spent countless hours in the sand with 3-footed viz trying to find a halibut. I can't tell you how many hours I've spent. I still give it the good college try when the water looks good. Um, but you got to be comfortable with diving by braille and knowing that you got a 35-foot drop. You're not going to see the bottom till you're 5 feet from it. And then the way that we dive here, at least me and my buddy, I don't really dive with anybody but a good buddy, Aiden Brown, because I know he's got my back. We both we dive with tourniquets because of the shark presence. But we know each other's bottom time. We know exactly, at 30 feet, we should be down for about 45 seconds to a minute because we're working so hard. That's the difference too, is you have to spend a lot of time really trying to find that good structure when you have the visibility that's so low. And when you find it, it's funny, more often than not, when we actually line up one of us and shoot a fish, it's because the other called out the structure ahead. So when I come back up, I let them know, I'm like, hook a 90 degree. There's a shelf that goes about 10 feet, looks like a hole that's about 8 foot back. It's almost like an ADRAC, alert direction description from the military. And then he immediately goes down. He knows what he's looking for. He looks in the hole. He comes up. I hear his shot. We wear GoPros, so we like to, get big, cool video footage and stuff. It's always fun to recap the dive and then share it. But, we got a good system. So it's speechless communication when we're out there, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that's mostly overlooked. Some people don't know, diving with a buddy. I remember first diving, and you're like, yeah, I'm diving with a buddy. But when you have like a real buddy, like
Yeah,
it is on point. Like everybody
exactly.
is like tuned in exactly what you're doing. You're all on the same page. Even if you separate slightly, you know exactly what's going on. And
Mhm.
then, yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So there's a couple of things I wanted to ask you. So striped
Yeah.
bass, do you go for striped bass up there, or is that more north?
No, there's areas around here, like in the Monterey area, those beaches and stuff, and there's a couple guys that have really honed in on them and nailed them. I've tried a few times. I think I've seen a white flash, but I haven't really spent a lot of time doing it. That's the other thing is, it really comes down the guys in this sport that become very successful. It's time. It's when they've been able to, get to a point in their life, have the time, or they have the time now. I have 2 kids, 7 and 2. And then we also decided during COVID to throw in a golden retriever puppy into the mix.
Yeah.
so, so it's always, it's the trade-off, but that's why I really enjoy diving local. You figure these reefs out in the ecosystem, and when you get a 2-3 hour window, you can capitalize and come home with some meat.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend, Chris, and he was saying, when you don't have a boat, like you basically just do your shore dive from your one
Exactly. Yeah.
spot, and that spotlight. But the cool thing about that is you see the different shades of that spot, like
Mhm.
why was it fishy today, and why was it's not like necessarily like oh, this spot's really fishy. No, it's just when you go to one spot, you can see how a spot can turn on with the tide
Yeah.
and all of that. Yeah, you get really dialed. Um, and it seems like up there with the weather being the way it is and the conditions being the way it is, that's something it's really important to learn
Yeah.
diving. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I went out yesterday and we just got a pocket of swell where it's reporting 1 to 2 foot for about 5 days. So that last fourth or fifth day should be the best because it's so calm. It's like a pond, stuff's going to settle. But we hit the front end of that after some swell, and it was a pea soup. I mean, it was 5 foot of biz, but it's a lot of shallow diving too, 20, 25 feet, and you're just taking your time, and you're working a system, and we're calling things out, and you finally find a fish, but you got to put in some work. It's a workout for sure.
So, what is your most prized fish up to this point? Like for you, I think you were the most like proud of, where you came home just glowing, like I did it.
It's big lingcod are great to find in Northern California. There's a lot of guys that have been hammering them. I don't know if you've heard of red triangle spearfishing.
Oh yeah,
That
100%.
crew,
Yeah.
yeah, that crew, they get up there and just nail them along the Sonoma and Mendocino coast. I used to do a lot of abalone diving and had chances or a reason to really drive that far, 7-8 hours north. And during those times back from 13 to about 2017 till the season closed, got some better lings in the 20, 22 pound range. Around here, like a 12 or 15 pound lingcod is pretty solid fish. But eating wise, I really prefer Cabozone because they eat, abalone, crab, octopus, kind of the whole package of wanted fish. And they're very abundant. I passed on a lot. I shot 2 yesterday, but I see so many all the time. So you pass on ones in the 17, 18-inch range. And once you think they're about 20 plus, then, those are the mature fish and take those off the reef. And they're excellent table fare, whether you grill them up or fish and chips for the kids. Both my boys like fish sticks and things. So
Yeah.
it's nice to have fresh fish and not pay $17 a pound at the store for it.
Could you share with everybody Cabozone? Some people don't know.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, Cabozone is if a lingcod was an iguana, this thing's a toad. It's just they're big heads. They don't have teeth. They have some big grinding pads in the back to crush crab and abalone shells. I've shot Cabozone that have had 6 like 2-inch ab shells in its gut. I mean, just gorging on them. It's pretty amazing. And the shells just break down by their stomach acid. So if you get lucky, you got one and you can find like a polished ab shell. They look similar to a lingcod. They don't have scales that have that real smooth skin. And they can have the blue meat sometimes. I think that's from like an enzyme in their liver or something. But most often than not, the meat's white, but it's that white flaky meat. It's great for fish and chips. I've got a really good recipe with Chardonnay, lemon, and capers and butter, and great.
Are they the ones with the poisonous eggs, or is
Yeah,
that
that's
right?
yeah. They've got poisonous eggs. They got some spines on them. It's actually the rockfish that have the big
Yeah.
spine.
Yeah, the sculpin, right? Or
Yeah, sculpin, and then there's some other. They're kind of like in the sculpin family. They look like a giant sculpin, basically.
they are, yeah.
But yeah, it's funny you're targeting a fish that has poisonous eggs.
It's just a weird
The defense
thing.
mechanism. Really odd. I don't know what it is about them, but um, their lifestyle is probably because they don't swim around a lot. Rarely do you see them out and about. They're always on the bottom, just settled in. But
And they don't
really,
even like to move, really, even when like
yeah,
I remember diving at work and like almost putting my hand on that and the sculpins and like almost putting my hand on it, like get out of here. And then I remember they have just ferocious appetites too. Like we
oh yeah,
yeah, we like fed one a whole mackerel, like a big like a I mean smaller mackerel, but it ate a mackerel. And I was like, oh my God, like the thing.
yeah.
But they are delicious, that's for
They
sure.
are. They're good eating. And then other fish too, the rockfish like olive rockfish, um, kelp rockfish, black, blues. In this area, we get the other one I really like to target is grass rockfish. To me, they almost look more like a grouper. more like a bass really than a rockfish. And they can get pretty big. I've shot them, almost pushing 6 pounds, which is pretty solid fish for around this area.
Is that different than the olive rockfish?
Yeah, the olives, they sit more in the water column.
Okay.
I've found them pretty shallow. They'll hang out a little bit deeper. They'll school up, but more often than not, they'll kind of insert themselves in like big schools of blacks and blues. But the grass rockfish are kind of like a cabozone. They just sit on the bottom. They really hunker down, little ambush predators, but they're really good eating. It's those rockfish that have the bigger shoulders, a little more fillet on them that are, you want to target.
Yeah. So describe like obviously we talked about low vis and stuff, but describe your equipment where you're using, because it's very distinct and different when you're doing that kind of hunting.
Yeah. I pretty much load up a full quiver every time I go to the water because I've had days where I scout the night before and it looks like it's going to be crappy, 5 foot. And I show up with a 28-inch gun and it's 20 foot of fish. Overnight, it can change quickly. So I've got a 36-inch mid handle. That's really my go-to by Captain Bly spear guns. Thing's amazing, just absolute battle axe. The thing will go through the side of a Honda and a Cabozone's head, no problem. And then I'm not a big guy in spending a ton of money, so I really just run Rob Allen's. Those things are great. You beat them to hell. I'm always diving, bad viz and the surge, they bang up, and they get the job done. I've used other guns, but the Rob Allen just never seems to fail. You take it apart, you can put a new cartridge in the center and change it out. And their whole kind of Kevlar, I don't know what it is, some sort of nylon Kevlar mix with the plastic. The stuff's indestructible, really. So hats off to that guy. And, when he designed everything, you listen to him talk, he designed these guns that we use regularly over here for lingcod to shoot, yellowtails and big game fish over in South Africa. So they're built, like a diesel and operate like a sports car to me. So, and then the last thing I like to use recently is the pole spear. Gatku makes a solid pole spear, and I use the 7-footer. And in shallow water and the thick kelp, it can be kind of a pain to maneuver around. But when you have the viz and you can make the right approach, it's a lot of fun. I find it really rewarding to land a fish on a pole spear.
Absolutely, yeah.
A regular gun. So.
I never hunted with a pole spear other than when I was little. And then we went on a trip last year and I think I shot a yellowtail, with the pole spear, and I was like so stoked on it. I was like,
Yeah.
And it's usually if I had a gun, I'd be like, whatever. But I was like, oh, all right, cool. I'm like a real hunter now. Wow.
It's funny. I started with one of those cheap, like orange or blue ones. When I first got into it, before I bought a gun, my father-in-law was like, go get a pole spear, go hunt around the reef, you'll figure it out. And then it's funny how you come back to it a little bit just for the challenge. It gets sometimes, after a couple fish in a hole and it doesn't move and you pop it, like, all right, let's change it up a bit.
Yeah, that's what I think it was. For us, it's like, okay, I've only, how many more 10-pound? They're like, there's a giant school of 10-pound like yellowtail, and it's like, okay, yeah, give me the pole spear. Let me try to just get this, see if I can just do this to check this off. And yeah, it's a blast. I think it makes you a better hunter though too, because you have to really try to work everything you can and really pay attention to the way the fish are acting. But yeah, it's funny you talk about not spending money. I mean, you have children, so there goes that too. But the biggest thing, you're diving in that viz when it's bad, what are some tips and things that you do that you guys have kind of modified to help you dive?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing is a high vis float line, something that you can see really well, white or yellow, at least 50 foot. That way, when you're down and you find something good, some structure, some hole, or you actually mark a fish, you want to be able to find it again. You come back to the surface, you drift around, it's tough. The other thing would be a really good flashlight. There's a bunch out there. Dark Waters makes an awesome one. The V11, that thing lights up holes. The only thing in dirty water, sometimes you get a lot of backscatter. So it's good to have that lower
Yes.
setting and use the 750. So, sometimes it can white out a whole hole and you can't really see much. So, dial it down a bit. And I'd also say, buddy diving is key. Having a guy, he's helping you out. You're working in a team. Whether he finds something, calls it out to me or vice versa, watching each other's back. And then having a float line is the only way you can really see each other, because in 30, 35 foot of water, you can't see him down there. You see some bubbles, but you really have no
Yeah.
idea. And then, he pops up 30 feet away from you. You weren't really watching him at all. So it's really just, it's a bit of an art, dirty water diving. But you do it a lot, you get used to it. And really just the first thing is you have to be comfortable. You have to be comfortable not seeing the bottom. And then when you start to make a dive, not seeing the bottom till you get there. So it's not for everybody, but we make it work.
Yeah. I know there's like a lot of talking to yourself you do as you drop, where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, all right, I should be coming up. There it is. Yeah. One thing I found too that works pretty good, like we would use at work, we would always use drop clumps a lot, where it's like just a line with a weight on it. And if you found something, you could drop it there and then you could go down and you'd literally just be like, because the viz is so bad, you'd be right next to the drop clump most of the time, like, so that you can still dive with a reel if you wanted to, but you had that as a reference point for your buddy to go get you if something were to happen. No, so that, but I also saw a video recently, a friend sent me from Central California, and the viz was amazing. He was in Big Sur, and it was amazing. And it was like, I've never scored anything like that before, but Big Sur was pretty incredible. I was like, damn, there's a lot of life out there.
Yeah, if you can find some good spots, a lot of guys find some spots they can hike into. But there's some public access area around Kirk Creek or Mill Creek. That's a little lower, lower Big Sur. But I've had days there with 5 foot of viz, and I've had days there with 50 foot of viz. Crystal clear water. It was incredible. So it's an awesome area. Totally agree.
So how would you describe, like, let's say Central California where you're diving? Some people consider it northern, I guess, but for our argument, for our reference, I guess I consider it like San Francisco and north, like the real, like, how would you describe that compared to like where those red triangle guys are diving? Is the bottom much different? Is it different, or is it just a little bit harsher conditions, or is there much difference when you're traveling, say, 7 hours north versus where you're at?
Yeah. So I'd say the Sonoma coast has some areas that can be pretty similar to Big Sur, but Big Sur has real steep cliffs and some areas that can get deep real fast. But what I've seen in Big Sur, the structure there is a lot of big boulders. You can tell that, over time, the coast is just, dropped into the water, and that becomes a structure. Up in Santa Cruz is real shallow water. It's dirty, it's silty, it's sandy. Same in Half Moon Bay. But when you get up past San Francisco and you start getting to the Sonoma coast, you can get some areas that look real silty and milky. But then right next to it, there'll be a fine line of current. You can see an open patch that goes into some pinnacles, offshore, or something that's coming up out of the water and can open up viz. And then Mendocino can look really similar to Carmel, where you get real deep water fast, and it's just got those big rolling rocks and structure. Schools of fish are piling up on them. And then up near Shelter Cove, the Lost Coast, that area, if you can get up there by boat, it's an awesome abalone area. It's excellent for diving and fishing. And it's crazy. I've had days where the viz was a foot, and you're literally diving by braille till your bar hits the bottom to look for abs. And you always have your spear gun if you see a decent fish. And then you move 100 feet, and I've had a clear line of water where then it was like 50 foot viz. It was incredible.
I think that's from all the rivers and the runoff and the way so many rivers up there. And that Lost Coast is incredible. Yeah,
it's awesome. And then there's some, you can tell where there's some kind of spillways of rocks coming in the water and washing it up, but it's hit and miss. But those red triangle guys, they capitalize. I don't think it matters with those guys.
They just
Some of
go.
those fish, I mean, it all comes down to, your schedule. For me, if I can squeeze in a quick dive on the weekends, or yesterday I took time off work just to be able to go dive and do a little bit of diving. But those guys seem to get out there and just nail it. And then you got so many spots when you have the time to do some scouting and checking things out. So I get down up there when I can. I get down to Big Sur if I have the time, but most of my diving's real local.
How's the kelp forest in your area? Are
It's
there?
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super thick, real healthy, a lot of abalone and fish. Over the last 5 or 6 years, I'd say it's gotten better that I've seen. And then there's areas of California that have just been completely decimated, like Fort Ross, Salt Point, Van Dam State Beach, a lot of the beaches near Mendocino Headlands and areas of Shelter Cove, complete kelp forests that were 100 yards long and thick enough to almost walk across are just gone. It's pretty crazy to see.
Why do you think that is?
Keeping up with the closure of the ab season, and then just listening to a few TED Talks, podcasts, my own personal reading. Water temperatures rising, ocean acidification. There's a big shift in the ecosystem. I don't know if it's cyclical or not, but with all these urchins coming in and just destroying big kelp, because that's what they eat, and that's what the abalone eat. And when you lose the kelp forest, it disperses all that other life that used it as the canopy in the home. And now you dive just these areas that you is kick as far as you can, and it's just barren wasteland with minimal fish and covered in urchin. But I saw a Forbes article actually the other day, written by a local diver around here in Monterey, and she was talking about how there's it seems like commercial industry is really starting to boom a little bit in Northern California for the urchin, and hopefully that helps cull some of this issue. But it's a mixed bag, but I've seen it firsthand, and a lot of guys have too. And it's a bummer to not only be able to go out for the abalone anymore, but the impact it also has on the other ecosystems as well.
Do you guys get sheep's head that far north at all? Is it mainly Point Conception or south?
Guys, I haven't shot one. I know some guys who have hit them in Monterey and Carmel area.
Yeah.
They get them in Big Sur. I wouldn't be surprised if one's made it in Santa Cruz. I just haven't seen it because he hasn't come within 5 feet.
No, that's interesting. And I think that's it kind of brings up a weird point, a good point too, with the ocean that you mentioned, cyclical, and it's like we really haven't been studying the ocean with any kind of like real data for very long. So, and I know just from looking at surf records and like having been big into surfing and seeing like when all the El Ninos were, and then so these El Ninos, everything seems to be happening more and more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
Is it, or is it just actually being recorded? So, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I don't know either way. I just always it interests me a lot because I mean, just this week, someone caught a striped marlin off La Jolla on a half-day boat. And it's like, what? I mean,
I
yeah.
shot a calico bass in Santa Cruz 2 weeks ago. I couldn't believe it. I saw it coming in the sand. It came about 8 feet away, did a fin flare and looked right at me. And for a second, I was like, that's a calico. What the hell? Normally that's not a species you see up here, but guys are shooting triggerfish and spotted bass in Monterey. And, and I remember there's a bluefin boom out here. Guys have been nailing bluefin not far offshore here in Monterey Bay. And then I think it was 2 years ago, there's a town called Davenport about 10 miles north of Santa Cruz. And they were catching yellowtail not far offshore. So random. It's interesting how these pockets of fish just make it, they follow a current and they just keep going. And they either make it up here. And the cyclical point too is like, because I've thought about it a little bit. I wonder, are these ocean patterns that have happened over long periods of time, and are we accelerating that? So now they're happening more often in shorter periods of time, or are we actually changing weather patterns and ecosystems? Is it that kind of impact, or maybe it's both? Um,
Yeah.
I don't know, but there's something going on. That's for sure.
Yeah,
It's
I know. And
just
it's funny because when you spend, a huge amount of time in the water, it's like, I don't know about data, but I do know something's going on.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
we got 400-pound bluefin off the coast. And my first thing is that, oh, wow, the population's coming back. But according to everybody, like, no, we're
Yeah,
decimating the population of bluefin. So why the hell is there a 400-pound bluefin off the coast here when they're usually on the other side of the ocean, in the smaller
yeah,
ones? But I mean, then there was in 1982, they had a big boom of bluefin too that was like caught off here. And it's like, it's just interesting to me because I really don't have any answers, but it sure
yeah.
begs the question, like, what the hell is going on? Like,
Yeah, yeah. And the one thing with the ab closure that I did see a little bit is, sort of the rec guys, the divers, the sportsmen who are out working with the scientists and sharing information. Whether they actually take it into consideration, I don't know, but I saw a little bit of it, and I think that needs to happen more often. It's you can study something and you can have scheduled dives and go look at it, but when you actually live it and you're in the ecosystem once a week and you're exploring it and you're understanding it and you're in um, you see it firsthand and you witness the change. People study a sector of area over a very controlled amount of time, and then they give you a report, but they're not seeing the full story, and sometimes. So it's good to have that back and forth.
yeah, that's where too, science takes a lot of criticism because you're always like, well, who is the scientist and what are the scientists doing? Do they have a baseline, or how are they getting their data? Are they just standing on the dock and asking a fisherman for his catch when, like,
Yeah,
we've been diving, and I can tell you right now, there's like, that is not a fair example of what's down there. Like there's some giant, or whatever. But it's always interesting because there just seems like there's not a lot of information. I think we've just been doing stuff for such a short amount of time. We don't really have a
hmm,
baseline. They're still trying to get a baseline. But then
yeah,
when everybody gets pissed is because they say there's this baseline, and then people argue because, no, I've seen this, I've seen that. How many years of data? Um, yeah, it's going to be real interesting as the years go on and we have the technology, we have,
hmm,
um, cameras on all of us, like going diving to see if that, what kind of data and what kind of change in thinking that helps with everybody, like as far as what's
yeah.
normal.
No,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, it's interesting. you know, but I think it's interesting too when you go on trips and you go to places where there's like not that much human uh, interaction, I guess, with the
Mhm.
animals, and it's decimated too. And you're like, what the hell? Oh, because that chain
Yeah,
reaction of the Chinese fleet's been off here 300 miles away and they're taking all of
mhm.
this. And then, or you go somewhere and it's just absolutely loaded and you're like, why can't we just like keep our hands off stuff for just
Yeah.
like 5 years and let me have at it like later on? Um, but that leads me to, do you have any trips or any goals or things that you want to try to do in the future with spearfishing, or you just
Oh,
keep doing your
definitely.
thing?
No, I'm gonna sound like a broken record with everybody else. 2020 ruined everything. It was the it was the big year. But honestly, though, the last couple of years, my buddy and I had been. He did get a boat not too long ago. He's got an 18-foot fish right, and he's run it to Santa Cruz Island a couple times. Thing skips across the water, no problem. And we had plans of trying to get over there and find some yellowtail and sea bass hunting and things, and just getting some better water. And then, of course, bug diving. He's actually in Santa Barbara now, doing some shore diving, I think, a couple hours ago. But, with the year, I've been working from home now since March 5th. And then, not only just the young kids and schedules and things, but now I'm teaching second grade. I don't know if you have any of the virtual learning of it yet.
I got 3 kids, and my wife's getting the brunt of it because she's working from home, but I'm still going to work. And it's like she's trying to do these meetings, and then, hey, I don't understand this, and I'm like, I don't understand that. Like, I don't. Been in school a long time.
Oh yeah. I was gonna say, all that aside, a couple goals, connect with some bigger fish. It'll happen. I used to be really fired up about it years ago, and I've really just kind of come to accept, like, this is my diving now, and won't be my diving forever. My passion for the sport isn't going to go away just because I can't connect with a nice 30-pound yellowtail under a kelp patty or something. But when it happens, I'll be so stoked. So just something to look forward to. It keeps me fired up. Keeps the hunger
That's a good point, man. Like, I have a lot of friends ask me, like, what's this? And what's your biggest this and biggest? And they were all like really disappointed. I was very much like you are. I just dove in my little kelp field, and
Yeah.
whatever swam in front of me. I mean, I guess I could have been better at diving and get white sea bass more often, or see them more often. But really, it was just about going out, spending time in the ocean, shooting something, and bringing it home and eating it, and trying to figure out a way to make fish taste good. That was a hard thing for me, like, for a long time. But yeah, I love the hunting, so and I think when you spend enough time in the ocean too, you kind of it's like a second home where you go down and you start to understand how all these even the little animals you don't even shoot, it's like, oh, you do this and you do that. This is Larry, the, whatever. And this is, you just start, like, we had lobsters, like pet lobsters, Larry and Lola, that we had that hung out at the same spot, like, for that season or whatever it was. And we didn't actually eat them because we had them. We caught these two lobster. I'll just be we caught these two lobster. They were rather large, and kept them, and had decided to grow them. This is years ago. Grow them, like, just for the hell of it, in 2 milk crates. Like, we zip tied 2 milk crates together off our pier. We're at work, and then every morning we put a little fish in there, And then somebody bothered to look up how long it takes for a lobster to get to really, really big size. And it was like, oh, maybe, like, I mean, they were big, but we were like, we're going to make like a 15-pound, And so after the season, like, we took pictures with Larry and Lola, and then we went, and we had this little spot that nobody really would go to. I don't want to say it's secret or whatever, but it's just our little like nook in the reef. And we put Larry and Lola there. And yeah, it's just fun. But you have all these stupid relationships with, like, just random types of fish too.
Yeah.
And I think I think you just get that from just spending all the time underwater,
Oh, I mean, totally. We were talking about it yesterday. As soon as we got on the water and we saw what the conditions were, we looked at each other. We're like, hey, we're gonna have a good time. Sometimes you put a little pressure on yourself. I only have 2 hours. I got to go find something, and it's like, let's just go have a good time. So I see senorita fish. They always distract me. There's a couple cool fish, like a kelp rock, or not a kelp rockfish. It's called a giant kelp fish, and they are exactly the color of kelp, like exactly that kind of greenish yellow, a little bit of brown. They look exactly like kelp. I probably swam by 100 and didn't see them, but when you finally see one and get some video of it, it's awesome. These things are so camouflaged. It's incredible.
Yeah, even their fins have like little kelp, like,
exactly. Yeah, it's crazy, man. That kind of stuff. You see an octopus. Now, I'm not like the guy off Netflix where I'm going to go back every day for a year and visit
with the dolphin, the guy yeah. There was one where a guy with a dolphin, he swam out and swam with this wild dolphin. Did you see that one? This was like years ago, IMAX.
No, I didn't.
He had like a pet dolphin. Like, it was a rogue male dolphin that was causing problems. And so he was pretty much on this little island. He was put in charge of it. So he'd swim out every day and would play with the dolphin and, like, whatever, just had this relationship over the years. Like, would just leave all the tourists alone. So he just did that. Like, that's a pretty cool job. Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to be in the water with anything like that, with a dolphin or a marine mammal. But a couple guys, I saw a video yesterday of a guy, his name's Ryan Sampson, goes by Slam Squatch on Instagram, and I think he was diving Big Sur, and they look like Pacific white-sided dolphins, maybe, or porpoises, one of the two, but they cruised right by him. That kind of experience is pretty incredible. So
Yeah, I love that stuff. I mean, I never get used to it. We used to joke around at work. We'd have a dolphin next to the boat, be training it, and then there'd be like a school of dolphins going by, and everybody'd be like, "Oh, wow, wow!" Like, and it's like there's a dolphin right here, but like it's just something about seeing them in the wild, you know. So, do you have any particular places in mind you want to like try to travel to, like Mexico or?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the islands. I'd love to get to the Coronados. I haven't had a chance to get over there. And then of course Baja. I see, I've watched a million Baja videos.
Yeah.
It just looks it looks so awesome. But also, my father-in-law spent a lot of time down there spearfishing and bug diving back in the day. He's told me trips, and there's California has so much to offer. It's hard for me to really think outside of there. One day I'd love to get to South Africa, try some diving. New Zealand, mostly because those areas, they seem so similar to California, but so different at the same time.
100%. When
Yeah.
you hear about the kingfish, like giant yellowtail, but it's like, okay, it's just like our yellowtail, but bigger. And then what other things going on down there? Because it looks like California. I mean, you can
Hmm.
tell the species of certain plants are different. Yeah, it lures you in, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had your story, your great white story. Was it you that had you were down in the islands and you had that great white roll up to you? Did you have
Oh
something like
yeah.
that? How was that? Let's talk about that. It's good with a
Yeah,
good
that was
viz.
you probably know the area, Talcott Shoals
Uh huh.
on the front side of Rosa. Diving there on the piece every year. Up until about 2 years ago, we went on the piece. My father-in-law, brother-in-law, and a bunch of same group did some bug diving on scuba. I was glad I was on scuba that day too. The year before, in 2017, we saw two white sharks at Talcott, and they told us that they were starting to come around. They cruised a couple divers, and then 2018, when I saw this one, it was the first dive of the last day. I think it was Sunday, November 18th. I have a weird thing with numbers I can remember. Got in the water, go down the anchor line, just, cruising to the bottom. It's like 55 feet deep. And I looked to the left, and this guy was I knew he was longer than, a basketball hoop is tall, 10 foot. And with his tail, he was at least 12 foot. Couple guys who, dive the islands regularly is like, oh, that's a small one. It's like, oh, he looks
Yeah.
huge to me. But he wasn't really paying attention. And he cruised by and kept going. And so, right away, I turned my camera on and started chasing after him. I couldn't help myself. Oh man, I got to get some video of this quick. And then he hooked a right and came back and circled a couple times right in front of me, probably, I don't know, 30 feet away, and presented, full broadside. And I could see his eye kind of looking at me, but he just cruised slow. Then he went off, hovered over a couple more divers for about 20 minutes, came back again, one more pass. And I have a video on my Instagram that's pretty good one of him kind of cruising by. And then he disappeared, swam off. I waited about 5 minutes, didn't see him. And I literally was right next to the boat the whole time, which is the best part. So as soon as it was time to turn my back to him, then it was a short swim.
Right. Well, are you familiar with the Shark Tracker app for your phone? What is it? It's Expedition White Shark. I'm
I've,
looking at it
I've,
right now.
I've heard of it. I haven't downloaded it, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
So it's funny because if you pull it up, like I literally do this all the time because I just geek out and all this stuff. Um, that spot you're talking about, the shoals, it's like there's a great white there, and he just hangs like there's little pinpoints of him going back and forth, like the front side or I guess the north side of the islands.
Yeah.
He just bounces in between that thing back and forth. It's a male, and he's like 12 feet or something like that. But
That's
yeah,
probably him.
it was hilarious because you just mentioned that. I was like, oh, I think I just saw that dude last night. No, looking at that stuff, it's always interesting. But I think the other side of it that's kind of interesting, how really disinterested they are for the
Yeah.
most part, in us. I've seen it with other sharks too. It's like they want aquatic animals. They don't really want you. It's just when you have good viz, it works in your favor. But when you don't
Yeah.
have good viz, that's a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, when I saw him, the presence I felt, if I had felt threatened, I wouldn't have swam after him. Obviously, I would have been like, oh shit, let's get back to the boat. But he just didn't give a shit about us at all. And he was like, I'm here. So I was like, cool, I'm gonna get my camera. It was just a really cool experience, once in a lifetime. Around here diving, I hope I don't run into a white shark. you know um, and a couple guys. It's such a cool experience. But talking about hearing guys explain white shark behavior, who understand it well. The bite that I'd likely probably give would be some sort of investigative type thing, grabbing me. What the hell is this in the kelp? And that's why I dive with a tourniquet. If you get bit in one of your arms or one of your legs, and being in the military, I would hope I would be able to keep the wherewithal to either help my buddy or help myself, to be able to either apply it. And even if I don't, why not have it anyways? I mean, to your point, I don't have a boat. I can't swim back to shore and get it. And if you know how to use it and you know how to apply it, it's real quick. So we've developed a quick system where we put it on the front of our belt. Either one of us can pull it off quick. It'll pull right off. I use a quick little piece of bungee cord as a double wrap. And then we use the cat tourniquet, and then that can be applied quick. And we've kind of talked through as a buddy, all right, here's what I'll try to do. You talk and prep, and if you're able to save yourself or save your buddy, it's good to be prepared.
Yeah, it's funny. The first time, and it worked. Tourniquets, training, and all that stuff. We talk about it, and we have them with us. And I heard somebody at the last San Diego Freedivers meeting, I think a couple meetings ago, the last one for me, but he was saying he dives with a tourniquet. And at first I was like, you're like terrified. You must be really terrified of like sharks. And then I thought like, well, I mean, and then my always thing is like, oh, I can use my float line as a tourniquet. But
Yeah.
realistically speaking, when you're talking about, time, you're bleeding out.
Yeah.
Like, and the wherewithal, okay, you're losing blood. Are you going to be like, and especially in your area up there, it definitely seems like a smart investment to try to figure something out like that.
Yeah. It's, I've asked a lot of guys, they don't wear them. It's a personal thing. But for me, it's worked well. It doesn't come off. I've dove with it on the front part of my belt, probably 50 dives, got it caught up, and then never lost a thing. Have the same tourniquet, just rinse it with fresh water, keep it out of the sun, so it actually works. That kind of thing. But
yeah, because I talk about when I was doing the thing about diving in murky water for the Noob Spiro guys. So if you don't listen to Noob Spiro, listen to their great stuff.
I've listened to
it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Great.
Yeah, Isaac, I talked to him about diving in murk through the military diving in shitty areas. Nobody wants to dive anyways, but I would say minimize your gear. But in that situation, like you're saying, there's a way to minimize drag and it catching, and it's kind of it's an easy thing to carry that will definitely help save your life, and you're going to wish you had it if something were to happen, for sure. Like I said, especially in that area up there. So what are the main seasons up in that area that you dive? Do you dive year round? You try to dive year round pretty much, or?
Yeah, it's mostly year round. In the fall and the winter, if kind of species, their seasonal patterns and things. A lot of these fish, rockfish, and especially Cabozone and lingcod, they move in shallow to spawn. And, that's when the big ones come in, so you get a chance at a better fish. But at the same time, you're also plugging fish that may be full of, a sack of, 2 million eggs or something. So that's the trade-off. But you can't lift skirts underwater. So that's it. You just you go for it. And then, halibut seem to be really been showing up around May, June, July seems to be the best month. But the water was warm here for a while. We still had 60-degree water warm, but
I was going to ask you, what's your water? Yeah. 60 is about the warm, what? 60 is about the warmest
60,
it gets up there. 62.
we had, I want to think back to September, maybe August, September, there was a patch of water that was like 66, 67 degrees.
Wow.
Real warm. Near Capitola and Aptos, that area, if you're familiar, that's where the water gets real warm, right in the back of the bay. Santa Cruz, I'd say on average, it's like 55, 58. A little bit warmer than Big Sur or Carmel because it's so shallow for such a long time. I mean, you got to go a mile offshore to hit 100 feet. But in Carmel, you can have 100 feet within a stone's throw of the shore. So that upwelling, that water gets cold. And I think earlier in the year, around March, April, I had water in Big Sur and, South Carmel area that was around 39 degrees, 40 degrees.
Yeah. I was going to say something about that because I know from surfing, I was going to say, I've seen it in the 40s up there. Like, yeah, just cold because of updwellings or the straight cliffs. People don't think about that when it comes to California, but like that area is freezing.
Yeah. So I have 2 mil, 3, 4, and 5 mil booties for different situations. Yesterday I wore 2. In those situations I wear a 5, 7 mil suit. I kind of have an odd philosophy to wetsuit. I like to stretch as much life out of it as possible, and I will do whatever it takes to not buy a new one. So
no, it's not an odd philosophy at all. It's called being a parent. And I'm going through that right now. They're like, dude, you've had that wetsuit forever. I was like, yeah, it's warm.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care what it looks like. If I'm not cold, then I'm fine. And what I'll do is I'll even, apply like a layer of neoprene cement to the chest or areas where I'm banging up against the reef and things, just to stretch it out as long as possible. So I think I bought one of those JBL ghillie suits about 3 years ago and still using that thing. It works great.
Yeah, it's funny because I got the same Rife suit in every picture from like the last 5 years. I think, I don't know. I think this year is going to be the year I get a new suit because it's it's definitely turning about a 3 mil. I don't know.
That's the other thing too.
Yeah. So yeah, Eric, thank you so much for spending time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Meeting, talking, and being on and sharing your kind of story, your style of diving up there. We've got to have you back, and I hope you get a chance to get out and get out of Central California, get in that warm 65-degree water somewhere else and dive. Take it to Baja or something. Yeah,
it's on the list. So hopefully next year's the year. No excuses. So if my wife will listen to this, so hopefully she'll be like, oh wow, maybe he deserves it.
Well, the thing about Baja, I think that's so unique is you can get away with that trip for like $400, $500, like for 3 days of diving, that I can swing. Like we can do that. Like, especially if you come back with a few 100 pounds of fish, like that tends to smooth things over. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Eric. I appreciate it, brother.
Hey, thanks, Brett, for having me on, and I'm going to keep listening.